There's a technique that big farmers don't want you to learn. Not because it's difficult. Not because it requires expensive equipment. But because it's too simple. Too cheap. And it works too fast for their business to continue making sense. I discovered this technique by accident, on an obscure internet forum, in a 2009 post that had fewer than 200 views. The guy who wrote it disappeared after that. Never posted anything again. And I kept wondering, why doesn't anyone talk about this? So I decided to test it. From scratch. In my own garden. With my own hands. And what happened in the next 72 hours completely changed the way I see the soil, the plants, and everything I thought I knew about gardening. But before I tell you what happened, I need you to understand something about soil that most people completely ignore. Dead soil doesn't look dead. That's the trap. It has color, it has texture, sometimes it even smells like wet earth after the rain. But inside, it's empty. No fungi. No beneficial bacteria. Without the microscopic network that transforms nutrients into real food for the roots. It's like a body that still looks healthy, but inside the organs have already stopped working. And most of the gardens you see out there, including mine, at the time, were exactly in that state. Beautiful on the outside. Dead on the inside. I tried everything. Chemical fertilizer. Organic compost. Scheduled irrigation. Crop rotation. Each solution worked for a short time, and then the soil returned to the same lethargic state, with weak plants, yellowed leaves, and harvests that didn't even come close to what the seed packets promised. That's when I found the post. The method was called by a name I had never heard before. An old expression, used by farmers in Eastern Europe at the beginning of the 20th century, who had discovered through pure observation, without a laboratory, without formal science, that a single ingredient, applied specifically, in a specific quantity, at a specific time in the lunar cycle, was capable of resurrecting completely dead soil in less than 3 days. 3 days. Not 3 weeks. Not 3 months. 3 days. The ingredient was charcoal. But not in the way you're thinking. This is where everything changes. Most people who use charcoal in their garden just throw it on the ground and mix it in. Simple as that. And then they wait months to see any results, if any results appear at all. What those farmers discovered, and what modern science only confirmed decades later, is that charcoal, on its own, does almost nothing. It's like an empty house. It has structure, it has space, it has capacity. But it's empty. With no one inside, nothing happens. The secret is in activating the charcoal before putting it in the soil. And the activation process is what nobody tells you. You take the charcoal, pure charcoal, not the kind used for barbecues with chemical additives, that's important, and soak it for 24 hours in a specific mixture. Rainwater, if possible. A spoonful of unrefined molasses. And a cup of mature compost, the really dark, almost black kind, that has already gone through the complete decomposition process. You mix everything, soak the charcoal, and leave it. Just leave it. What happens in those 24 hours is invisible to the naked eye, but it's one of the most fascinating things in nature. The charcoal, with its absurdly porous structure, we're talking billions of micropores per gram, begins to colonize. The beneficial bacteria in the compound enter these pores and settle in. The molasses serves as food for them, accelerating their multiplication. At the end of the 24 hours, you no longer have inert charcoal. You have living charcoal. A microscopic sponge teeming with life, ready to be inserted into the soil and explode in biological activity. I did exactly that. On Friday night, I prepared the mixture. I soaked the charcoal. I went to sleep without expecting anything, honestly. I was curious, but skeptical. I had tested too many things that promised miracles and delivered disappointment. On Saturday afternoon, 24 hours later, I opened the container. The smell was different. Not the smell of ordinary charcoal, that dry, mineral, lifeless kind. It was a damp, almost fermented smell, like forest soil after a heavy rain. Anyone who has walked through dense forest knows exactly the smell I'm describing. That smell of something alive. Of something happening. That already told me that something had changed. I applied activated charcoal to a 1 meter by 1 meter flower bed. I mixed it into the first 10 centimeters of soil, in a proportion of approximately 10% of the total volume. I watered lightly. And I waited. Nothing in the first few hours. Obviously. Biology doesn't work at cinematic speed. But on Sunday morning, less than 36 hours after application, I noticed something that stopped me in the middle of the garden. The earthworms. Where before I could barely find an earthworm per handful of soil, now they were everywhere. Visible on the surface, moving towards the treated bed as if something was calling them. Because it was. The microbial activity of the activated charcoal had created, in less than 2 days, a biological attraction pole that literally reorganized the soil fauna around it. And earthworms are an indicator. Where there are plenty of earthworms, the soil is functioning. But the real shock came on the 3rd day. I had planted some arugula seeds in the treated bed at the same time as the application. Old seeds, from a packet that had been in the drawer for almost a year. Seeds that, under normal conditions, would take 7 to 10 days to germinate, if they germinated at all, because old seeds have a low germination rate. On the 3rd day, 72 hours after applying the activated charcoal, I counted. 23 seeds germinated in a 1 square meter bed. 23. With old seeds. In 72 hours. I stood in front of the garden bed for a long time. Not because it was magic. But because it was science that I had never seen work so quickly, so visibly, so concretely. The microbial network that the activated charcoal had created was breaking down soil nutrients into forms immediately absorbable by emerging roots. The seeds weren't fighting against inert soil. They were being actively fed from the first millimeter of growth. And then I began to understand why this isn't taught in gardening courses. It isn't taught in fertilizer stores. It isn't discussed on the big YouTube channels that are sponsored by fertilizer brands. Because if you learn this, if you truly understand that you can resurrect any soil with charcoal, molasses, mature compost, and 24 hours of patience, you never need to buy their product again. Never again. I spent the following weeks testing it in other garden beds. In different soils. With different plants. At different times of the month, to understand if the lunar cycle really made a difference, and it does, but that's a topic for another video, because it's complex and deserves separate attention. In all tests, the pattern repeated itself. Activated soil. Accelerated germination. More vigorous plants. Superior harvest. No chemical compost. No paid fertilizer. Nothing but ingredients that cost pennies or that you probably already have at home. You can find pure charcoal at agricultural markets for less than 10 reais per kilo. 1 kilo is enough to treat several square meters of garden bed. You can find unrefined molasses in natural product stores or directly from sugarcane producers. Mature compost, if you don't already make it at home, you should start today, but until then, any basic organic composting serves as a starting point. The total cost of my treatment was $0. I already had everything. And the result was the best planting cycle my garden has ever had. Now I need to be honest with you about one thing. This method is not for those who want instant results without any effort. It requires 24 hours of preparation, attention to detail in the proportions, and the patience to understand that soil is a living organism that responds to care, not chemical violence. If you're willing to do it right, the result will surprise you just as it surprised me. If you want to throw some powder on and see a miracle the next day, this method isn't for you, and honestly, no good method is. But if you've read this far, I know who you are. You're the kind of person who wants to understand how things really work. Who doesn't accept superficial answers? Who plants because they love the process, not just the product? And for that kind of person, this method changes everything. Now tell me, have you ever used charcoal in your garden? What was the result? Write it in the comments, because I read every answer and I really want to know what you've tried before. And if you know someone who has a garden, who plants at home, who struggles with weak soil and doesn't know what to do, send this video to that person now. For free. With nothing in return. Because this kind of knowledge deserves to circulate. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, the button is right here. No messing around. No empty promises. Just content like this, every week, for those who take gardening seriously. And if this video gave you at least one new piece of information, a like already tells me that, and helps me bring this content to more people who need it. The soil is waiting. It just needs someone to believe that things can be different.